Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with another classic pay-per-view review as nominated by my Patreon backers. This week I'm looking at WWF In Your House 16 Canadian Stampede from July 6, 1997 at the Saddle Dome in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, if I may be serious for 1 minute. This show was nominated by Peter Sidorn, Antonio Basile, and James Steele over on Patreon. Guys, thank you so much for nominating this show for me to look at. I was very excited to have this on my list to review because up until this week, before I watched the show to review for this channel, I had never seen this pay-per-view. I've always been told, I've always heard that this is one of the best in-your-house shows, one of the best pay-per-views the company really had around this time period before the Attitude Era as we know it officially kicked off. So I was very excited to see what all the fuss has been about for the last 21 years or so. This show takes place in the midst of the festivities of the Calgary Stampede, which is one of the biggest rodeo festivals in the world. And of course, the name is synonymous with Stampede Wrestling, which is the organization that Stu Hart ran from the late 40s all the way into the mid 80s when the McMahons bought the company from Stu. Then later sold it back to the Hart family, but that was a very big Calgary tradition, very big Canada tradition for Stampede Wrestling at that time for over 4 decades. So very synonymous with the area. So it was a big deal. This whole thing was just the culmination, kind of the high point of this very interesting time in the company when you had Bret Hart and his family members together as part of the Hart Foundation, and they were pushed as super big bad guys in most of their programming that takes place in America. But over in Canada, no one wanted to boo the Harts. No one wanted to boo them. Even when Bret was told to heel on Canada, the fans wouldn't boo him. So this is a very interesting dynamic. It's the first pay-per-view out of Calgary in the company's history, and so this is a big, it's labeled as a big homecoming for the Harts, even though they all pretty much lived there, so not much of a homecoming when they never left. But yeah, big old deal here, and the company is really embracing the unique dynamic of the crowd here. They talk about the hated are going to be coming home the heroes, and talks about how weird it is that, you know, these dastardly villains are being cheered in their home country, and they're, you know, the normally what we consider to be good guys are being booed by the Canadians. 12,151 people were in attendance at the Saddle Dome, just a hair under 210,000 pay-per-view buys. This is the highest attendance and the highest gate for a wrestling event in the history of Calgary wrestling. Vince McMahon, Jim Ross, and Jerry Lawler are on commentary, and good Lord, look at that hat on Jerry Lawler. He's the king of the Cowboys here. First match of the night is Mankind taking on the 1997 King of the Ring winner Hunter Hearst Helmsley, who was accompanied to the ring by China. These two fought in the finals of the King of the Ring tournament last month. This is a continuation of their rivalry. I loved the video package here narrated by DJ Michael Hayes.
Hunter Hearst Helmsley, born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Mankind, born with a dream that turned into a nightmare.
It was cool to see in this package part of the build to this matchup where you see China breaking her silence. At this point, she hadn't really talked much at all. It's one of the first times she had ever spoken, getting on the microphone and challenging Mankind to come down. And Mankind says, "Lucky for you, I'm a good kisser." Early in the match, as Mankind's getting his heat, he steals Triple H's curtsy taunt, which I thought was pretty hilarious. Jim Ross calls Mankind the Prime Minister of Parts Unknown, which I'm really sad to see that title didn't pick up momentum for not just Mankind, but anyone else. You could have taken that title and put it on anyone, and with the right promotion, I think it could have worked. License to print money there. Later in the match on the outside, Triple H whips Mankind into the stairs area. China intercepts Mankind with a power slam, and the back of his legs clip onto the steel steps, and oh my God, that looked like the most painful bump you could ever take. No thank you to that. I'm tapping on that. That's just the worst. And that's, you know, that was just Mick Foley's style on how he bumped, because he already took a bump on the floor, which is bad enough, but then he upped the craziness on that by by clipping his legs on the steel steps where there's no control. You have no idea where your legs are going to hit. That to me is just totally scary. Triple H working the legs. The match itself, I think it was a good action overall and a good story, but I think what almost took me out of it was how badly they abused the referee here. I'm not talking about they beating him up. He did take a little bump at one point, but there were so many times when Jimmy Corderas is just like so blind and so laser focused on what's going on that he's like missing these things that are happening right just out of his peripheral vision. And I know referees are kind of blind. That's kind of the old stereotype with the wrestling referees. But this to me seemed especially blatant because you have the referee looking like an idiot, being taken advantage of by Triple H and China multiple times in this matchup, and that did get a little grating. And then to top it all off, the match ends in a double countout. Now, I know it doesn't sound like I'm putting this match over, but I think it is a good match. I'm going to give it 3 stars out of 4. And I say that because the action itself and the story they're telling, I think, is very strong. Really, there's nothing wrong with this match except for the dumb referee. And the finish, it's upsetting at first, but then when you see what it leads to later in the show, which I'll get to, I think it makes total sense. So I give this one 3 stars out of 4. After a video package that shows how much Calgary loves the Hart family, we get Taka Michinoku versus the great Sasuke in a very special exhibition matchup, kind of a one-off deal here. I know a lot of people are going to say, Brian, it's Sasuke, not Sasuke, but not in the case of this guy. And I said this before in my ECW Barely Legal review as well. I've always heard the great Sasuke pronounced with 3 syllables, even by guys who ought to know. So I'm going to take their word for it and say it's the great Sasuke. Before the match officially begins, Triple H and Mankind continue their brawl from the back into the crowd, then back to the backstage area. And just as the match is beginning officially, a guy walks by with a sign on the hard cam saying, "This is Wregret. Ooh, you're such a good smart fan, aren't you?" Then you see a lower third graphic that says light heavyweight division. At this point though, what division? There is really no light heavyweight division at this point. The light heavyweight title isn't even officially part of the WWF until November, when Taka Michinoku would win a tournament to become the first champion. But at this point, their division isn't really much of one. It's basically just Taka and the great Sasuke here. Not very often you have like a highly regarded, unsigned wrestler just doing a one-off appearance like this anymore. Last one I can think of off the top of my head is, especially for WWE, is Jushin Liger at TakeOver against Tyler Breeze a couple of years ago, and then that's probably the last one I can think of. And what really before that in recent memory, I can't think of anything. But I mean, wow, this match is awesome. It starts out very slow and deliberate, then kicks into a second and a third gear. There's good striking, there's good grappling, there's good submissions, there's high flying. The announcers are gobsmacked by what they see. At one point, Vince calls Taka a samurai warrior. Now, between the commentary that he has for this matchup here and his random plugging of the extraordinary Japanese match he does at the top of the show, you get the sense that he's not 100% on board with this idea of bringing in Sasuke and having these light heavyweights.
And this man is the stuff legends are made of, so we are told.
The match ends when Sasuke kicks out of the Michinoku driver, but he comes back and hits the Thunder Firebomb to beat Taka and win the match. I'm going to give this one 4 stars. Vince calls this match at the end on commentary a credit to the light heavyweight division, and he's right. It's a great match. Go out of your way and see it. I think it's awesome all across the board. And of course, if this were in the Tokyo Dome, it'd be 6 stars. After the match, we see more backstage brawling by Mankind and Triple H. Clearly nothing was resolved after that double count-out finish in the match we saw between them earlier. This whole thing would be resolved, for the time being at least, in a cage match at SummerSlam the next month, which Mankind would win. And that match ended when Mankind ripped off part of his shirt. It was meant to reveal a pink heart on his chest to signify the debut of Dude Love in the company. But he'd been wrestling under the hot lights, he was sweating, so the ink on his chest had run and wiped off, so it's this big pink blob that he exposed before he did the big elbow drop at the end of the match there. This was just a great chapter in their rivalry that would continue on until the year 2000 when they were fighting for the World Championship. We get an interview backstage with a normal-looking, or something close to it, Paul Bearer, where they talk more about Bearer's accusations recently that he accused Taker of having murdered his family at the funeral home all those years ago, but that Kane is alive. This is the beginning of the angle, of course, that would lead to Kane's debut at Bad Blood in October of that year. They show a highlight from only 6 months ago at the Rumble, 97, and you see Bearer is in his white face paint with a black mustache. It's so jarring to see 2 ridiculously contrasting versions of the same person in one segment. This is supposed now, and for the longest time, I never knew why Paul Bearer went from having the makeup and everything to looking more like normal, having no real makeup and just kind of looking like a normal person. I found out though this happened because he took several months off after having fire thrown in his face. So basically, what I think this is either he got hit with the fire and so the face paint melted off and he couldn't wear it anymore, or he was hideously scarred from the fire and this is supposed to be him trying his best to mask his deformities with what he thinks is appropriate flesh-colored makeup. This leads into the WWF title match as the Undertaker defends against the man called Vader, who is accompanied by Paul Bearer here. Undertaker won the title from Psycho Sid at WrestleMania 13. He was supposed to fight Ahmed Johnson on this night, but Ahmed got injured. He had a knee injury in the middle of a scuffle with the DOA the previous week. It's one of the many times that an injury would derail an Ahmed Johnson push. It was really something that was a big problem with him during his time in the company. But Vader was his replacement here. Bear is just keeping this thing going, keeping it fresh in everyone's minds that the Undertaker allegedly murdered his family by Bear just like, murderer, murderer, at Taker repeatedly the entire match. There's one point where Taker is kind of stalking Bear around the ring, and JR says that Bear is waddling for his life, and there's a cutoff, and as like the referee's distracted, Bear hits Taker with the shoe, and then like Bear walks away looking very pleased with himself, and he just goes, murderer, right in the camera, which I thought was great.
Oh, very proud of himself.
Vader gets knocked around a lot by The Undertaker in this matchup here. It's like Vader is the bigger guy, obviously, but he's bumping his ass off for The Undertaker, which surprised me to a great deal here. The crowd is at a fever pitch in this matchup here. They've been hyped pretty much the whole show, but especially here, that you can see moments where the camera is shaking because everyone is cheering so much and stamping their feet so much. It's making the whole arena shake. It's a really cool visual that unfortunately you don't see a lot of for a couple of reasons in today's wrestling. We got a choke slam attempt, but Vader hits the Dick Kick City right in front of the referee, and he does nothing about it. Taker goes for a tombstone, which is impressive in and of itself. Then Vader tries to counter it and possibly reverse it into his own, but Taker falls down. They don't get the timing right, so he falls on top of Vader in a heap. You can hear Vader yelling, "I'm kicking out!"
Look at this! 1, 2, and no!
Which of course you would kick out of that. That'd be a terrible finish if that were the case. Vader goes for a Vader bomb, but he takes too much time. Taker hits him with a low blow of his own. A super choke slam out of the corner. Vader kicks out of that. A regular choke slam. Vader kicks out of that. Finally, a tombstone, and Vader is finally bested. Taker wins and retains the championship. Vader looking very tough and resilient in the face of defeat. I'm going to give this match 3 stars out of 4. I think it had a great story, very hard-hitting, way better action than I expected there to be on paper. The crowd made this match even better and made it more fun to watch. It really elevated the match for me. Taker would lose the championship the next month to Bret Hart at SummerSlam, which, you know, eventually I might get into in a review for this channel, but that's for another time. Main event time, it's a 10-man tag team match as Goldust, Ken Shamrock, the Legion of Doom, and Stone Cold Steve Austin take on the Hart Foundation of Bret Hart, Owen Hart, the British Bulldog, Jim Neidhart, and Brian Pillman. Of course, the Hart Foundation was one of like the last major groups in the company's history where you have that many guys who are all like vital and a big deal with like a horseman-like dynamic. There's like your big leader, there's your mid-card guy, there's your tag team, there's your heavy, perhaps. You know, in later years, you'd have like the later version of DX after Shawn Michaels retired. You'd also have Evolution as a big example of this, but like nowadays when you look at stables in like WWE today, it's usually like one guy and then like everyone else is his toadies who are pretty ineffective and don't matter ultimately, or it's just a group of everyone's kind of a loser. So it's like there's no real leader at top of that. This is kind of a very unique thing to have everyone playing a big role, because Owen was the Intercontinental Champion, Bulldog was the European Champion. In a month, Bret would become the World Champion at SummerSlam. They were booked very strong. They were, like I said, booked as huge heels in the USA, but Canadians absolutely refused to boo them. So here, the timing just was perfect. They already had a show booked in Calgary for this pay-per-view, and as luck would have it, the fans just kind of reacted this way, where the Canadian fans would cheer the Harts no matter what they did, no matter how hard they tried to be heels. And so that's why you had this dynamic and why they really like embraced it this time and talking about how, oh, you know, this is kind of one of the first places you hear the whole Bizarro World tagline used to describe Canadian fans, how they cheer the bad guys and boo the good guys, but really it was more focused on Canadian than anything else. Bret is working with a bad knee at the moment, which is one of the reasons why you have this like massive 10-man tag team match. So he can do some work, but he's not like working on a full-time basis at a high level. He can take breaks when he absolutely has to, and it does help continue the ongoing feud between he and Stone Cold Steve Austin, which has been going on ever since 1996. So it was kind of a cool way to keep that going with all these extra people added onto it. We get a pre-match promo where everyone on the American side but Austin speaks. The 4 guys each talk, then when it's Austin's turn, he just walks off. Very lone wolf of him. And as the entrances happen, you see the Harts make their entrance, and they make reference on commentary to the documentary crew filming at ringside, which would become Wrestling with Shadows, a very pivotal, seminal wrestling documentary that covered the Montreal Screwjob in pretty good detail. The crowd goes insane for the Hearts in these entrances. When Austin comes out, he probably gets the best or most mixed reaction from the partisan crowd. Everyone else on his team gets booed, and so like he's just so over, it's kind of impossible for the Canadian fans to boo him. But oh my God, the pops every member of the Hart Foundation got was nuts. I cannot remember the last time I heard a crowd that at a non-Mania show get this loud for people. Before the match, the Smart fan returns with a "What's kayfabe" sign in the background. Ugh. And as the match goes on, every Hart teammate gets a big pop when they're tagged in. Every Foundation member gets a big chance to shine, cut off by the Americans for a bit, rinse and repeat, but it's basically everyone's getting a chance. All 10 guys are getting a chance to get over here. We get a big brawl, one of the many big brawls with all 10 guys here. Austin beating up Owen's leg in front of the Hart family at ringside. Austin fights Brother Bruce in the crowd. Not Brother Brutai, Brother Bruce, different guys. Owen looks to be out of the match. He's taken out with the injury. Then afterward, Bret beats Austin's leg to hell. The turnbuckle post, the fire extinguisher, a figure 4 around the leg post, and Austin is taken out with the injury as well. So we're dead even. More shit breaking down, more brawls. Bret's fighting Shamrock. At one point, Bulldog hits Goldust with a superplex that could have gone very badly. Austin comes back in. He's got a hot tag between he and Bret. Bret puts Austin in the sharpshooter, but Animal cuts that off right away. Then Austin puts the sharpshooter on Bret, but nobody makes the save until Owen comes running back. That was very interesting, is that like Animal gets in right away, cuts that off from happening, prevents Bret from hitting the sharpshooter, not even getting the move in. But Austin has a good 10 seconds or so with the hold on Bret before Owen makes the save. And everyone else is around, standing there. What's stopping him? I don't know. Austin gets into it with the Hart family again. He grabs Stu Hart by the collar, then Bruce intervenes, and another Hart brother comes in. Austin punches him. In all the chaos, he gets back in the ring. He's rolled up by Owen for the victory. So the Hart family wins the day here in a big, wild, emotional main event. I give it 4 stars out of 4. I always find it hard to stay invested in a multi-man match with like this many people in it, but they managed to keep it very interesting. And once again, the crowd helped. The partisan crowd, the pro Hart family crowd made it really exciting. The brawl continues to rage on even after the bell rings. More Hart family members enter the ring area to join the brawl. Cops are brought in. It's madness. It's pandemonium. The closest thing I can come up to with anything remotely like this is like the old territory days when you had fans getting in the ring and stuff and causing crazy shit. Like that's kind of what this reminded me of, because you never see something like this anymore in today's product. So just look back in here, it was a really cool kind of throwback to see this thing happening. After a little bit of celebration and things calm down, Austin runs back in, beats up Anvil. The Hearts beat Austin down some more. Security cuffs him and takes him away. Boo that American, get him out of here. Let's have the whole damn Hart family make their way into the ring. Like Stu Hart gets in, Martha Hart gets in, and you see more like the Hart kids as well. I see Harry Smith there. I see Natalia. I see Tyson Kidd. I'm pretty sure I see Teddy Hart as well. It's such a wild sight and such a great moment for Canadian fans and for Calgary and for the Hart family. It was a very emotional moment. I got a little choked up, I will admit, watching this moment, just to see this emotional high point for this family and knowing that like in just a few short years, a lot of things are going to change and a lot of things are going to go different in a bad way for this family. And that to me, just like seeing Owen holding his kid, that to me was like, oh, that really got me right in the feels. And that's the show. Hard to believe because this review feels kind of short. It's because this is a 2-hour pay-per-view. The In Your House pay-per-views were always shorter. They were always 2 hours as opposed to 3 for the major pay-per-views. Of course, then 3 became the norm. Then 4. Now we're at 4-hour pay-per-views now officially, which God help me. But so it's nice to watch a pay-per-view and have it in a nice little compact 2-hour package and everything's nice. It's great. Nice little bow on it. I'm going to give my overall grade for Canadian Stampede is going to be an A+. And I don't think, maybe one other time in the history of this classic pay-per-view review segment, I've given an A+ grade, but this show was that good. The show was perfect. The matches were good. The crowd was hot. The right people won. There was drama. There was emotion. Just a great feeling watching this show. I was smiling watching this show. It was great. It was very exciting, and like I said, it was over at a decent time, so I wasn't burned out. The only nitpick I have is how dumb the referee looked in the opening match with Mankind and Triple H, but that's just kind of a nitpick. Well, that's going to be my review of In Your House Canadian Stampede. Believe the hype, folks. It is as good as advertised. If you haven't seen this show yet, do yourself a favor and check it out. I forgot to mention this show did win the award for Best Major Show in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that year. So, hey, if they say it's good, then it must be good. Thanks once again to Peter Sidorn, Antonio Basile, and James Steele for nominating this show for me to review. If you want to play a role in determining what classic shows I review in the future, be they good, bad, or somewhere in between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret and become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have the opportunity to nominate shows for me to review in the future. Next time on the Classic Pay-Per-View Review, I'm going to check out TNA. I haven't done a TNA pay-per-view in a while. This one I think you're going to like. I'm going to keep the streak of like good pay-per-views going. I'm going to watch Unbreakable 2005. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.